Okay, so we just want to talk about how to elevate our interiors, and a common thing that is requested is to have this type of annotation where there's essentially little lines going through the elevation and a little marker for each of the levels. And there's a few ways to achieve this. You can put detail lines on here, and you can put detail components, or you can actually put spot levels on each of these that refer to their specific level in the project, that kind of thing. Generally what we want though is a quick way to annotate a whole heap of things, and a way to do that consistently across multiple areas. So we've made this family, and there's a few different sort of variations. There's sort of a bathroom one that's got typical bathroom heights, and a few for accessible toilets, because there's quite a few things to set out in accessible toilets. Now this is actually built as a symbol family, or a generic annotation family, and the reason for that is it needs to be able to go outside of the crop region, because you often got stuff at the side of the view you want to crop out, and if it's a symbol and annotation, then it can move outside there and still be displayed while hiding any geometry that's not relevant to the specific view. Now the obvious thing to go for here would actually be a detail component, but what you'll notice with the detail component is if I move the detail component outside, it gets cut off by the crop, so you can't actually put those outside. Now the reason you'd want to use a detail component is that the size of a detail component remains the same when I change the scale. So if I change this to 1 to 10, you'll notice the detail component stays the same. The symbol actually halves in size. And so to fix that, what we've done is we've built in a parameter in the family where you put in the scale that the actual view's on. So if I put 1 to 10, which this scales of 1 to 10, it'll then correct the spacing of all of these to still be appropriate, and it'll update the actual numbers to make sure that they still reflect what in reality you want it represented as. So that's the kind of workaround for that. Now what I've done here is there is a parameter for the length of all these lines, so you can say perhaps I just want it to be a bit shorter, and I can put a different one at the end, so you can just mirror that to the other end. So if you've got some elements you want to set it on this side, some there, it's easier to do. It also means if you've got a lot of dimensions that are very densely packed together, so if I highlight that with the accessible toilets, I can have the different accessible toilet annotation at the other end. So if I just isolate those and bring them together, you can see that there are a few elements that line up, but I can have a different piece of text at each end. So this one's the top of GPOs, this is top of their soap dispenser, and you can also, if you want to, sort of stack these up if you've got a whole heap of information to communicate. So if I just move this across and set that to a short number, maybe something like that, I can then show the third one with some additional information. Get that right for the size. So that's how I will show if I've got a lot of information stacked up. Now I can also show multiple things stacked up on top of a single line if I want to, and I'm doing that just using hard returns in the value. So if I go and have a look at the way the family is built, these are all just referring to height 1 through to 18 here, and then there's a line for controlling that end. If I come back to the family, if I go to the family, I can click on the type properties here. I can see here I've got this particular line for height 2, so just to be clear, this one here's only got 2 values in it. This one's got 5 values in it. If I click on the one with, I might add some to this one, hey? So if I come to this one, I can come in here and rather than just have soap dispenser GPO, I can add centerline hand dryer GPO, and if I come here and just press Control Enter, I'll now have it over 2 lines, and I can use my up and down arrow keys to sort of toggle up and down in there. So hopefully that makes it clear. You can move between those two to see what's on each line just using your arrow keys. It is a little bit fiddly, but that will allow me to get multiple items on the same line, so I could stack up 8 or 9 things that all happen to be at 1 meter, whatever's appropriate for this particular view. And yeah, if you want to create a new one, pretty much just copy it across. I can go duplicate, make a new one, and put in the levels that I want. So in this case I'll have 200, 400, 600, 800. You'll notice all the other values in here are just set to 0. That means they'll all just stack up on the bottom there, no problems there. And then I basically just need to enter some information, so that'll be like test 1, and so they're the 4 that I entered. You'll see I've got those 4 items entered into here, so it's pretty easy to make new ones with whatever you need. One thing there to note is I've essentially just left these other ones blank. If I was to start filling in information to those, because these are all basically stacked up on this bottom corner here, you'll see they'll all just pile up on top of each other. So I'd need to make sure on 5 and 6 that I've allocated a height to those so that it actually puts it in the right position. The other variable in here is this datum text. Now sometimes we want to measure to different parts. If you actually hover on this, there's a tooltip explaining what to do, but you can change this to the structural slab level, for example, and then when you hit OK, you'll see now everything from this particular annotation all refers to that one datum, the structural slab level. It also allows you, by annotating it this way, you can just remove it all together and just be left with the values if you want. So if you're wondering why I've actually included the space dash space in that particular in that way, it's just so that you can remove it entirely and not be left with an isolated dash in there. So hopefully that's a pretty clear explanation as to how I've built this. If I go into the family editor, I will just show you that the this is basically just a line in the generic annotation family, and this is a nested component that it basically just has 2 labels in it, and the labels are or 3 labels. One is the suffix here, one is the actual height that's being entered, and one is the actual text of that level. So that's just one family that's loaded in, align and locked to all of these levels. If I turn on the annotations, you essentially see there's a reference line in there because it won't let you create additional reference planes in a symbol family. That is controlling the offset, and that reference line has this this line here and this family aligned and locked to it, and essentially height 1's control is put into there. Now for that scaling to work, it's actually relatively simple. So you see this is 100 and the actual measurement in here is 5. The formula for that is pretty straightforward. It's just the height that has been manually entered by the user that they want that level to be at, divided by the scale, and then the scale parameter down the bottom here, so it's 1 to 20. It's divided by 20, gives you the correct sizing for all of that. And it's a similar thing for the length of the line. It's just the line extension divided by the scale. hopefully that explains how I built that and how to use it.